Okay. Welcome to this podcast. Short one. My name is Lach and Rowston. I'm one of the founders of Locker Room Gym. And I'm here today with my younger brother. And he is, as of August 2025, signed a UFC contract, then made a debut, and got a knockout. So officially, one win in the UFC, which is obviously, if you know anything about the sport of MMA, UFC is the top organization. And to just even make it into the UFC, you have to be the top 0.00001%. So not everyone makes it that far. So, yeah, I've got him on today to talk a lot about, his training specifically around cardio. Um, Cam's cardio is one of his greatest weapons, one of his greatest strengths. He's actually known in his gym for being the fittest guy in his gym, among some other things as well. Um, Probably the best banter as well. I know that's up there. But his cardio is his absolute weapon. So he's been doing it a long time, and he's got a lot of insights he can share with us today, which we're going to dive into. He recently did a Vo2 Max test, which we're going to dive into some of the numbers for that as well. But Cam, welcome to the show. Can you just give us a little bit of background on your athletic journey leading up until the UFC and the cardio component of each of those athletic journeys in the sports that you play?
Yeah, athletic journey. She's going to start with probably basketball from age 6 till 17, and that was a lot of running. Quite high level basketball in New South Wales, like a metropolitan level. So traveling to Victoria to play teams down there and stuff. So we're doing a lot of running, a lot of shuttle runs and stuff like that. On top of that as well, swimming. Did a lot of swimming in the summer, like swim squad for school, hours and hours of just laps up and down the pool. A little bit of soccer as well, so a bit more running there, but mostly aerobic-based sports. Nothing too crazy. And then from about age 15, I started picking up the weights and doing like your standard bodybuilding workouts. And then at about 17, 18 after high school, that's when I found MMA.
Yeah, awesome. And before you started MMA though, did it ever occur to you in the other sports that you competed in that you had a stronger cardio base than other people? Like, did you notice you were fitter, or you just sort of thought like, we're all kind of even at this point? Maybe it didn't occur to you that much.
Yeah, I think so. When I was playing basketball in high school, I was also playing at the metropolitan level as well. So I was like one of the stronger players on the team. And I would just be left on the whole game. Like I wouldn't get subbed out for the 40 minutes. And it was just because I was one of the better players and like I didn't get tired, and I noticed that, and I thought, yeah, I'm definitely one of the fittest players or the fittest player on the team.
Yeah, cool. But at that point, you didn't really do any specific cardio training. You were just doing the sport, and you just noticed naturally, hey, I'm probably just a little bit fitter than most people.
Yeah, no specific training, just doing the team training basically.
Yeah. Okay. And then you started MMA. This is probably right around the time that I was getting into CrossFit as well. And so obviously both sports are very, very cardio intensive. And so we started doing I started doing specific training for cardio. Did you start doing specific training for cardio when you were ever like just cardio only sessions, or were you just doing the sport?
I was just doing the sport. I think I started doing specific cardio sessions that when I was going into the city and training at that altitude gym. Our mutual friend who had an altitude gym there, and that was a little bit. It was just not random stuff, but it wasn't super scientific and specific. But it was mostly for the first 2 or 3 years, just hours on the mat and hours in the gym.
Yeah, cool. So really up until maybe you were 20 something years old, you never really were like, hey, I'm going to do just cardio training. It was more like, I'm just doing running and drills as part of my sport. And obviously there's cardio involved in those elements.
Pretty much, yeah.
And then obviously we were both starting weights at the same time as well. When did you go from, like, what was your weight routine when you transitioned into MMA? Because I know when we both started doing weights, we were both mostly doing weights. We were doing weights probably 4 or 5 days a week. And then at some point that shifted, right? That you started doing a lot less weights. So how long were you doing weights for what was your routine with the weights, and how much sort of extra stuff on top of that were you doing? And then when did you start to move it back down, and why did you move it back down?
So probably for like maybe like the first 3 or 4 years, or maybe like 3 years of doing MMA, I just did my own weight training. I just got whatever I saw on the internet and I just did that. I mean, I think at one point I was doing weights 6 days a week, 3 full bodies and 3 lower bodies. And it was just like 3x12 back squats, 3x12 RDLs, 3x12 leg extensions, 3x12 hamstring curls. And then I'd do an upper body day, which would just be like heaps of push pull. And I'd do that 3 days a week. Luckily, I was only 18, 19, 20, 21 at the time. So my body could handle it. But it wasn't the most scientific training. It was probably about 2016 when I met James Garland. That's when he started programming for me. I dropped back down to like 2 or 3 sessions a week with a lot less volume.
Yeah. Okay. So you're doing 2 to 3 weight sessions a week. Those weight sessions then also became more precise and not as long and probably more sport specific. And does that mean you had more capacity for cardio training? Did you add cardio and training then, or was just more of the sport at that point?
Yeah, that's when I was getting ready for fights, we were adding in 1 or 2 sessions on the air bike, which were targeting specific energy systems like the anaerobic energy system and like more alactic sprint intervals. But other than that, outside of training for a fight, it was all just do as much of the sport as I can.
And so up until you moved to, so we'll get to it, but yeah, you made the move to Auckland in 2019. So that would have been what, 2012 to 20, like first 6, 7 years of in Sydney. How much of that 6, 7 years you were training MMA in Sydney? How much of that were you doing specific cardio, heart rate, energy zone training for?
Not a heap. I don't think I ever wore a heart rate monitor when I was training in Sydney.
Yeah. And then when you look back on that time, do you think you could have really benefited from adding in some of that stuff, being more specific?
Oh, definitely could have benefited from doing heart rate targeted training, just having a bit more structure and purpose to the sessions that I was doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, cool. Okay. So you're down to like 2 to 3 weight sessions a week. Only in fight camp do you start doing some specific heart rate cardio training. You're mostly doing your sport. At this point, if I'd asked you, if I pulled you aside just before you left in New Zealand, when you were kind of on a bit of a run in Sydney, you're professional at this point. I can't remember exactly what your record was, maybe like 6-2 or something, 7-2 or something.
No way, 3-2. It was terrible.
Okay. How was fitness? Were you seeing it as like a weapon of yours at that time, or you were just like, no, I just need to work on other things. Fitness isn't a huge priority for me right now. Like, how fit did you feel, or were you like, hey, I'm the boss. Like, I'm fitter than everyone.
That was something I noticed when I moved to New Zealand. Was the boys in the gym weren't as fit as me, and I could tend to push a pace. And like in some of my earlier fights as well, I just seemed to win by overwhelming guys with just volume and pace, and if they couldn't keep up, they just folded, and that's how I beat a lot of them.
Yeah. And do you feel like there's a component? I mean, we know as exercise scientists that being able to have better cardio improves your capacity to do everything, right? To lift weights, to train more, all that sort of stuff. Did you notice as well, there was some element of, but I'm not talking about the New Zealand stint yet, we'll get to that, but did you notice that in Sydney you could train, like your training volume was higher than other people? Because you had some exposure to some other UFC athletes at the time. When you were hearing the amount of training they were doing you doing more than them?
Oh, I was doing way more training than they were. There was guys who were training once every 2 days that I knew, or once a day. I was doing by Tuesday, I had already done triple the amount of sessions that they would do in like a week. I'd already done 8 sessions by Tuesday.
And these are guys that are in the UFC.
These are guys in the UFC.
Yeah. So already, not only did you feel like you were fitter than most people, but you were also doing that base of fitness was allowing you to do more training and recover faster.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, cool. Okay, so then your journey took a very necessary kind of pivot. It was probably one of the lowest points of your training career, which I always feel like, in hindsight, become the best moments in your career. You lost in a title fight to a guy, Izzy Filikafu. I think that's his last name.
Kepu.
Apologies, Filikafu. At that point, you felt like it was getting too hard. You weren't getting what you needed in Sydney, so you made the move to Auckland pretty quickly. Do you want to tell us that story of how you decided to make the move to Auckland?
I went over to Auckland, I think it was end of October 2018, after I'd lost the fight the month before. That was with my ex at the time. And then we both went into CKB, saw how many people were on the mats and how many guys just turned up just every day, and how basically how good the training was there. And then I decided I wanted to move over. So then in January, the start of 2019, I packed up a couple suitcases, sold the car, broke up with the missus, and then moved over.
Yeah, yeah. And now tell me about that. So you went from like the guy in Sydney that was doing the most training, felt like you were the fittest. You still mentioned even briefly that you felt like you were still one of the fitter guys there. But how much did that getting into that environment change your perception of like how fit you were and how much training that you could do?
Yeah, when I got there and kind of realized like how much, not just how much training I could do, but how much training I needed to do, I knew like it was very doable. Like coming into a new gym with new coaches, and there's so much new stuff to learn. There's only, you've got to. I wanted to learn it all as fast as I could, and I knew if I just kept doing as many sessions as I usually do, plus extras, it was only a matter of time till I started to learn everything fast and upskill. So I knew that like the base I had already established in Sydney, and like the mindset and the discipline, and just coming over here, it was going to work out well for me.
Yeah, awesome. And then at this point, from a strength and conditioning standpoint, you kind of kept doing a little bit of your own stuff. That wasn't obviously a huge part of what they offered at the time. Obviously, that's changed a lot now. What did your strength and conditioning routine look like then, specifically around like your cardio at that time?
At that time, like my cardio routine was pretty much based on what the gym required me to do, what the coaches were requiring the fighters to do, whether they were getting ready for a fight or like in a fight camp or outside of a fight camp. And there was still like a lot of running, a lot of like targeted heart rate training on the air bikes and stuff like that. It wasn't specific, like super specific to every individual's like needs or like body composition and like how their muscles were structured and stuff like that. It was mostly just it was a very broad plan of general preparation for an athlete to get ready for a fight and stay fit in between fights. But a lot of the fitness came from wrestling on the mat. So we were doing a lot of wrestling on the mats and a lot of sparring.
And did you notice? I mean, you're already one of the fittest guys in Sydney in MMA. Did you notice a difference in your conditioning change when you got to City Kickboxing in Auckland?
Yeah, huge difference. I think by the end of 2019, I had done 3 fights in that year. But I had gotten ready to train for 6 fights. So I had prepared for 6 fights throughout that year. 3 of them had fallen through and 3 of them I actually carried through. So basically for the whole year, I was just in fight camp constantly the whole year. And that was, by the end of that year, I was extremely fit. Redlining very hard.
Yeah, nice. Okay, so at this point, you're the fittest you've ever been by a long way. You're becoming the fittest person at City Kickboxing. At what point do you feel like because now when you speak to anyone that you train with in the pro team, they say, oh, he's known for his fitness. Like he's going to put a pace on you that you can't keep up. Do you feel like that's something that you're still getting better and still improving, or do you feel like it was tapped out pretty early?
No, I think it's something that I'm still improving. Like it's not so much like that I'm going to put a pace on you. It's that I will put a pace and a pressure on people in fights and in training, but it's more so what I do during that time. I'm pressuring and I'm pacing you. I'm not I am making you tired, but I'm also not making myself tired by doing mistakes and stuff like that. I'm making you extremely tired. Yes, I'm getting tired, but I'm not making the mistakes that I would normally make earlier on that make me even more tired, if that makes sense.
Give me an example of that.
An example would be when you're stalking someone around the cage and you're trying to hit them, and you throw a bunch of punches and you go so crazy with the punches that you fall in and you smother yourself and you both end up in a grappling exchange, and then it's 50-50. Either of you could come away better off in that. But now it's like I'm putting the pressure on you. I'm hitting you with shots. I'm not going to fall in and put myself in a position where you could potentially reverse it, and I'll be on the back foot. Yes, I'm getting tired doing this to you, but you are getting way, way, way more tired than I am, because I'm not making those silly mistakes where I fall in, have to use a heap of energy to get myself out and put you back on the reverse again and start all over again. I don't have to go through that process.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome. So you obviously just improved yourself with the sport, and that's improved your cardio. But obviously, you can't get to that point unless you have a lot of cardio, you have a big gas tank to use, right? Because even if you did that style of efficiency, which a lot of guys in your gym have, if they don't have the gas tank, eventually they'll wear themselves out faster, or they have to fight a lot differently once they get tired. And getting tired in your sport has dire consequences, right? If you can't keep your hands up, if you can't protect yourself, you can't move your feet at the same rate you could at the start, that could easily end in dire consequences. So it's really important that you stay fit. Now every year as an athlete, you get smarter, you get better. What does cardio look like for you now? Like, how specific is it, and how important is the heart rate component to cardio? And just generally speak to like the difference in training to a heart rate and then not training to a heart rate. Like, do you wear like a heart rate strap every session now?
Yes, every training session, from sparring to hitting pads to jiu-jitsu, I wear this on my armband, my polar, and I wear my whoop as well. So I'm getting two different heart rates. The whoop isn't as accurate, but the polar is a little bit more accurate. When I'm outside of a training camp and I'm getting ready for a fight, and I'm not getting ready for a fight, there's the conditioning protocols I'm given. I'm allocated like a specific heart rate zone I need to sit between. It's usually about 10 beats between the lowest I need to sit at and the highest I should be sitting at. So in between there, and I just get to choose the modality I want to do, whether that can be like riding a spin bike, going for a run, hitting the bag, something like that. And a lot of the training is just dictated by heart rate now, which earlier on it wasn't. It was just going by feel.
And what do you think the going by feel versus going by heart rate? What do you think the big differences are for you? Is it like, I think I'm going, not that hard, and then when I look at my heart rate, I'm like, wow, I'm actually going too hard. And then is there an element of like, oh, I think I'm going pretty easy here, but it's like I'm actually going way too hard. I actually need to slow this down even more. Like, what's the feel versus objective differences you see?
Yeah, it's surprising when you're given the heart rate zones you need to work in, and you say you think something looks quite high, and then you start training or you start getting the legs moving on the bike or the treadmill or whatever, and then your heart rate, before you know it, it's past the zone you need to be in, and it's like, oh wow, so I really need to slow it down. And then I think doing a lot of that off feel, just doing like doing a lot of the conditioning by feel and what you should be doing. Like, say you're given a percentage instead of a heart rate, they say go 50% instead of sitting between this heart rate, and you go 50%, but really you're going 80%. And then that whole training session could be ruined because you are now using the wrong energy system, and you've created deficiency in your body, and it's not the point of the training.
Yeah. Yeah, and ultimately it doesn't get you to your goals. It doesn't get you as fit as you could be and seeking to those zones. And I think that's, for obviously a lot of people listening, they're like, well, I'm not going to step in a cage, but the principles are the same, right? If you're trying to get fitter, if you're trying to get more capacity, if you're trying to get stronger, healthier, going by feel and then going by objective numbers are two completely different things. And often people overdo it, they underdo it all the time. There's just a ton of benefit of working on their cardio. Now, I don't want you to call anyone out specifically here, but there are a lot of fighters at the gym that probably don't do the cardio, right? They don't do the extra work, but maybe they show up for the fight camps, they show up for the training and stuff. So how much of a difference does cardio actually make? If a guy is equal skill sets, both really talented, great strikers, decent grappling, but the cardio is different, how much of a difference does it actually make here? Is it in your opinion?
Huge difference. I mean, it all comes down to execution of technique and the efficiency of a fighter. And you can't do either of those when all you can think about is how tired you are, how much your lungs hurt, how heavy your legs are, how heavy your arms are. And so if you don't have good cardio, then doesn't matter how many times you practice the punch or the kick or the takedown, doesn't matter how good you get it when you're in the gym doing it. If you don't have good cardio and you can't execute it when you're tired, what's the point? They've wasted all their time.
And do you also find that those fighters, when they say you have an hour of striking or jiu-jitsu or whatever, by the end of that session as well, like they're just way more sloppy than the other people and they can't get the most out of that session?
Yeah, they're wasting their time. What they've done, what they have been doing or haven't been doing to improve their cardio is detrimental to all the technical aspects that they need to be doing for their fight, which is one of the most important things. Like, you got to have good technique and a good game plan, and if you don't have like a solid base to help prop that up, then you're going to get smoked.
And yeah, getting smoked is not like getting smoked in other sports. Yeah, and I think I see the same in here. A lot of clients come in, they neglect cardio a little bit, and their weight sessions get wasted. Yeah, they start off, their first couple of sets are good, maybe their big exercises, but by the time they get to the end of their session, they just can't lift the same weights. They can't recover as much because their heart rate's been spiking because of the weights. By the end, they're so weak, they're so tired, and it's not because they're weak. It's because they're strong at the start of the session. It's because they're so unfit that they can't recover to keep their actual weights and their volume higher. So it's the base upon that you lay everything. So it's so important. Now, you recently did a Vo2 Max test. Just give me the context of how you do this test and how you pulled it off, and I'll run through all the numbers. So everyone, to give them a bit of context, just to kind of wrap this whole thing up. So recently did a Vo2 Max. How did it work? When did you do it? Under what conditions, etc.?
I did it on an Airdyne bike. So my coach, Bill Smart, he brought me in, has a little iPad. He attaches it to a tripod in front of the Airdyne. We start at 45 RPM, and every minute it goes up by, I think it was 5 RPM, 5 or 10 RPM. And you need to maintain that RPM each minute. You don't need to go above it, but there's 9 stages, and by about the 7th stage, I was starting to feel it in the legs, and then the 8th stage was a grind. And whenever you drop below that RPM for longer than 10 seconds, that's when he terminates the test. And yeah, I got all the way up to stage 9, and I was holding stage 9, which is the final stage, for about 30 seconds, and then I dropped below, and that was it. But it's a very, very slow buildup of lactic acid in the legs.
And you're using a heart rate monitor for that as well?
2 heart rate monitors, using one on the chest, one on the arm, and then we were using a couple straps, one on the quads and another one on the other arm, I believe it was to measure blood lactate or blood oxygen.
Yeah, I think it's called the Moxie. We used to use something like that at Lachlan for some clients. Okay, and you did that for some reason you only had a 3-4 hours sleep. I'm not going to ask you why you had 3-4 hours sleep. And you did a training session earlier that day, is that correct? So you're already fatigued?
Yes. Yeah.
So you ideally would be doing it fresh.
It's only 9
is
minutes.
yeah,
It's only 9 minutes, you know?
only 9 minutes, says the UFC fighter. Okay, so now I'm going to read off some scores that you did for that test. Now, just so I know, that test, is that a universally used test amongst other UFC fighters around the world? Like, is that something that the UFC, like headquarters PI, puts out as a standardized test?
Yeah, that's the same test that the UFC PI uses.
Yeah, cool. And yeah, because they don't use the oxygen mask and all that other stuff. They might for some athletes, but to test it more broadly across everyone, to get data across all their athletes, this is the test that they prescribe.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so these are some of the numbers. Now, you sent me a whole bunch of stuff that I put into ChatGPT. So I'm just going to give a quick summary here. Now, Vo2 Max is basically what it means. People don't know. It's mils of oxygen per kilo consumed per minute. And so you get a number there. The numbers basically, we'll see low scores when people first come to us. They're sitting around probably like the lowest scores, I think, were around the low 20s. A really high score in locker room would be 50 plus. Every now and then you might see someone who gets 60. That would be very, very elite. To give people an idea, world-class elite cyclists and rowers, so Olympic level cyclists and rowers, they'll sit between 72 to 78. Cyclists, 78 to 85. And then some of the kind of freaks of the world, like Eliud Kipchoge, Lance Armstrong, some Norwegian cross-country skiers have recorded 82, 88. I've got some of the names here. So the top ever recorded, this guy, Oscar Svensson, he's a Norwegian cyclist. He got 97.5, which is like absolutely insane. Also, you got to remember, these are like endurance athletes. So like their whole focus is endurance. And then sort of halfway down the list, around like the 6, you got Greg LeMond, American cyclist. He got 92.5. Obviously, these guys only do cardio, and it's a cardio sport. Whereas, in MMA, it could be anything, right? It could be 25 minutes of wrestling, or it could be a 6-second knockout. So cardio is important, but the sport is obviously greatly varied. So you scored 82, which when compared across all MMA athletes in the UFC, you are on the 99.9th percentile. So basically the 0.01% elite, which basically means cardio is not really an issue for you. I know you always want to get better, and you will. And there's some aspects of it, interestingly, that you can do to improve that. But safe to say, when it comes to cardio, you know what you're doing. And yeah, look, I want to wrap it there. I think everyone that is listening to this, what you can take away from that is the importance of cardio and what it allows someone to do at an elite level. Having great cardio allows you to train more. It allows you to have more efficiency in your technique, allows you to recover better, to sleep better, to perform better. And that when that trickles down all the way to people that are just trying to get healthy for the first time, it's the same thing. You need that base of cardio to do all the other stuff you want to do in your life. Play with your kids, work long days, train weights, go play sport, all the things that you want to do. And poor cardio is always going to win you that. No matter how jacked you are, no matter how lean you are, all those sorts of things. If you don't have a good cardio system, you're always going to feel like you don't have the energy to do the things you want to do. So appreciate your time, Cam. People that want to follow the journey, Cam Rowston on Instagram. And then I know you've got a fight coming up. Can't say anything too much, but yeah, it's be sometime in the new year so people can tune in for that. So yeah, appreciate your time. And yeah, thanks everyone so much for tuning in.